What's up, guys? So today on the podcast, we have Kristian Woodmansee. He is a black belt under ATOS. I met Kristian last year, and he taught a seminar out at my gym. He was passing through town. We hooked up. He showed some techniques to me and the students. We got to roll together a little bit. I learned some things from him. And so he was just a cool guy to hang around, and I wanted to bring him on the podcast with you. So Eugene and I sit down and talk with him. We talk about some really cool stuff that I think you guys are going to be interested in. We talked to him about being a full-time jiu-jitsu competitor, like doing jiu-jitsu full-time. That's something that I get a lot of questions about from people that are new to jiu-jitsu, like what does it take to be a full-time jiu-jitsu competitor / coach or trainer, whatever. And he talks about that. So I think it's really going to be interesting. We talk about being a smaller guy because he's about 125 pounds. We talk about being a smaller guy in a gym and how that whole thing works. And we also sort of touch on the issue with Keenan Cornelius leaving ATOS. We were curious as to what he might think because, again, he doesn't, as he shares in this, he doesn't know for sure, but it's just what he thinks might have been a thing. But he kind of shares his opinion of what might have happened with Keenan, at ATOS, because, again, Keenan's one of the most, he's a very knowledgeable jiu-jitsu practitioner, very noteworthy, very high-ranked, very good competitor, all that stuff. And so it's something that's, going on right now in jiu-jitsu. So anyway, with all that said, I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. And as always, if you guys enjoy it and you want to listen to some of the back end stuff that we have, check out our Patreon, patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu Podcast. We have some exclusive videos on there and exclusive podcast extras, including a stretching cool down video. If you guys are interested in like cooling down after training, or maybe when you get home, you can go out of the shower, you can use a little stretching video as an example of some things you can do. And if you guys are interested in your recovery, check out Charlotte's Web. It's charlottesweb.com, and you can use the promo code Jiu-Jitsu10 to save 10% on your order. It's what I use, it's what Eugene uses. And again, if you guys have never used CBD oil, I can't recommend it enough. It's something that's become a daily part of my regimen. I take it before I go to sleep at night, and it really, really helps. So with all that said, let's listen to the podcast. How you been, man?
Good. Been busy, been crazy. I'm about to open up like another academy, so it's just been hectic.
Another one.
Back and forth. Well, yeah. So like I needed more space, so I signed a lease for like this huge space, but the build out's taking place, and I got to switch everything over, changing the name and stuff like that. So it's just a crazy, hectic situation.
What's the new academy name going to be?
Logic.
Okay.
I like that.
Because were you teaching, or did you own the one Roots?
Owned it. Yeah.
Okay.
So I came in on like a specific deal, and they basically said like, we'll make you like a percentage owner, and then after 5 years you can keep the space. But the one guy that was running it before I got there was embezzling money, so they basically shut everything down, and I took it over way too soon. So, but yeah, so like we've got some like negative. Everything's really good now, but like there's still some people that are like attaching the name to.
So you want to rebrand?
Yeah, so we're going to rebrand everything all at once, so it should be super easy.
Yeah, I don't know. Was the guy that was embezzling money, was he teaching there before?
Yeah. Yeah,
one of my students, his brother trained up at Roots, I guess, when that guy was teaching, and he left because he's like, I just didn't dig it, man.
Super sketchy dude. He was like, I mean, like, life choices are people's own, whatever, but like he was very like a typical like womanizer type black belt. Girls would come in for intros, and then he's trying to like them to hang out at the house. And then,
creeper.
Bad rapport, yeah. So like and I mean, even now, like a lot of people like, no, he's not there anymore, but they're still just like, oh, this guy used to be there. It's a bad spot type of thing. So I just got to keep everything. Yeah,
you got to rebrand.
100%.
Cool, man. So, man, like I know you've competed a ton. Do you have any competitions coming up, or are you just focused solely on getting the gym up and running?
Man, I've honestly been struggling in more than I've ever struggled in my life with trying to balance out like being a dad, being a husband, having an academy, and being able to train to be able to compete at the level that I want to compete at. And I've been having like really inconsistent results. Like I'll go win Nogi Pan Ams, but then lose my first fight at Pans, and then it's been like all over the place. So I'm kind of like taking a break right now. I was gonna go to Worlds, but I decided not to. Yeah. And do academy and everything going on, like I just figured like I don't really want to like go out there and be disrespectful to my opponents by not showing up prepared, So I've got a title fight for Fight to Win July 26th, and then I'm gonna kind of like just like coast and train, and then just hit next season really hard because the academy will be open and everything will be a little bit easier. So right now I'm just gonna put everything on hold except for that one fight, and then just keep trucking along. Nothing crazy.
That's smart, man. It's one of those things where a lot of guys, like, that come from a competitive background and they get into owning their own gym. They like, I know that, like, same thing with me when I got into it. I was like, yeah, we'll just run a gym and it'll just all happen. And then, as you become a business owner, you're like, holy shit, there's so much stuff to do that I never thought about doing. And this is way more work than I thought it was going to be. And you definitely have to kind of like, if you want it to be successful, and you don't have a whole bunch of partners running it for you, you got to have some help.
Well, 100%, and it's like, I travel a lot to teach seminars too. So like, I don't want to like spread my time thin with my family or with my own students. So obviously I know the more that I invest into the academy, the less I have to travel. But I mean, the academy is growing. I can't really say like, oh, I'm struggling financially because the academy is very successful. But I mean, it's still hard because it's like, I have my days where it's like, okay, do I invest in myself or do I invest in my students? I'm unable to like kind of figure out how to do both at the same time. So, but yeah, I mean, it's tough, especially because if I'm not successful at the gym, then I've got to rely on just training and teaching. And then, I mean, it gets really hectic. So, but I mean, like, you understand too, like, obviously you've got your goals and you got your students' goals. And like, at some point in time, it's like, hey, I need to help you do yours. So I got to put mine on hold, and then vice versa. But
absolutely.
How many years do you think, like, realistically now, how old are you?
31.
Yeah. How many years do you think high level competition you have left? Like, really, how do you feel physically?
I feel like I've got like 4 or 5 left in me. I mean, like, I need like a couple of surgeries. I need to kind of like tone it down and whatnot. But like, I'm not really big into strength conditioning. I don't have a nutritionist. I don't know what the hell I'm doing outside of jiu-jitsu. So I'm sure I'm better and stronger. But, I mean, I look at guys like Hanger and some other dudes that are like, in their late 30s. And I'm like, oh, they can still do it. But again, Josh is training full time. He's got little responsibilities outside of just training, so it's a little bit easier for him to focus. But I mean, like, I want to be able to pick up my daughter and take her places, So like, physically, I can't pick up my daughter because my shoulder is busted. It's a little pain in the ass.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I think once I can't compete, I think if I go to a tournament and I do my best and I can't get on the podium as an adult, I'm going to just kind of call it. So I feel like I got like 5 or 6 years left, depending on how I kind of like handle that, how much I dedicate myself, what supplements I take and whatnot. Yeah. But yeah, I don't see much more past that. I'll just teach at that point.
I've been curious, like, as far as smaller guys versus bigger guys, like injuries, or like if their body's more sustainable. Because I mean, you are rolling around with bigger guys most of the time because you're on the smaller end. But then on the other hand, it's like your body's a lot more mobile, and I don't know. It's kind of one of the things I've always wondered.
I mean, it also depends on the training environment because, if you got, like, say, like when we all started, what year did you start, Kristian?
2008.
Okay. So, like, I started before you back in, like, 2003. And I remember, like, when we started, and I don't know if this was the same for you back then, I started because I wanted to do MMA and stuff. And so when we started doing jiu-jitsu, we're all, fighting and stuff. And literally there was no real, like, sort of direction with the training. Sometimes it was just like, we're going to show a couple techniques and then we're just going to throw down every single day. And I mean, man, like, with that kind of intensity all the time with no purpose, it wasn't like we were always getting ready for a tournament. We were just beating the shit out of each other just because. And, if you come from that background, I think a lot of times it takes you definitely put some mileage on the body early.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I feel like I wasn't training purposely until I was already like a late purple belt, like when I went to the academy, and it's like, okay, because otherwise it's just like, hey, like, time to put on your big boy pants. Let's just train hard, and it was just like, and I'm like, oh, well, I mean, and I'm sure it's for everybody, but again, like, I didn't have a lot of training partners my size, so I was physically getting beat up before I could even do jiu-jitsu, so, I mean, I think I acquired all the injuries that I have now in my early stages. I mean, I haven't been hurt very much from brown to black, like once I kind of like handled my training more accordingly. But like, I mean, at white, blue, purple, I was getting the shit beat out of me even before I was even doing anything, but it's crazy.
What kind of injuries are you dealing with currently?
I tore like my bicep all the way off like my labrum. So I have like a slap 2 tear anterior to posterior. So like, I literally can barely like put my right arm like above my shoulder. I definitely got something wrong with my knee. The last time I went and checked my left knee, they said I had like internal knee fractures. I had like a partially torn ACL and some other stuff. But I mean, a lot of it just feels like I just have a lot of mileage on my car, like everything's just old.
Shit's starting to rattle and make noise.
Exactly. Like I still feel like I can sprint and do my thing, but like I definitely feel like my joints aren't like they used to be, and my ability to bounce back is when it used to be, and it just I don't know. I feel like I don't have that natural HGH going through my body like I did when I was 20 years old, and I could just run around and just not care about anything. But I mean, other than that, it's just like just being sore, just like, oh, I can't believe I'm sore today. I didn't do anything, it's just, I haven't felt it before. 30 hit hard.
Yeah. I think from the shoulder, like that is one of those things that's just not going to heal on its own. Obviously, like if the bicep's completely torn off, that's not as big of a deal. But a lot of times, you're younger still. Like if you're waiting, you can cause some more damage. So like if you want to make a really great push, 3-4 good years, kind of have to bite the bullet, get that surgery, and you got to be out for a little while, but then you'll be close to 100%. Hopefully, that's the whole goal is you don't want to like keep screwing shoulder up and you have no function.
I mean, the doctor said like, hey, it's all the way off. Like we're gonna go in there and put anchors in. It's like that's super crazy surgery. But he told me, he's like, I don't know what your percentage is now, but like I'd imagine with rehab after like 9 months, you'll be like 85%. And I'm like, well, I'd rather not take off for a year and then just keep training through at 75. I gotta but it doesn't hinder me while I train. It just makes it hurt more when I'm done, so.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, you have less kind of like that labrum is basically like the cartilage that kind of helps your shoulder stay in a good position. And then you're just kind of grinding that sucker. And with jiu-jitsu, everything we do, it's just can make some things and cause some bigger, I think bigger problems down the road, really. I mean, if you get corrected now, maybe less of a thing than it'll be later.
I mean, I'm hoping to be like the Terminator later. I don't mind like sitting down a couple months, a couple of years later now and like, just rebuild my body. Cause I'm not going to have to compete. But I mean, like right now, like with the baby, like I got to pick the baby up all the time. I got to carry the car seat, the shirt. It's just like, it's tough. So, like, even if I'm not doing anything with it, it's still being used. It's super hard. But I mean, when the time is right, I'll do it. But I feel great. Like if I was able to focus, I feel like I am physically able to beat the guys that I need to at Worlds and Pan Ams, but I just mentally I'm just not there yet.
Yeah. So you were talking about competing, and so you think that like when you get to for me, like for instance, like when someone talks to me about like competing, at this point, like I've been competing at Masters for a couple of years. And like for me, it's like it's completely like I'm just doing it because I enjoy kind of getting out there from time to time. And there are still a lot of tough dudes in Masters. It's no knock against any of them, but it's not the adults. Right. And so like when someone talks about competing like and being at a high level or whatever, it's all relative. But whenever like someone's like, can I be like, the best at jiu-jitsu or whatever? Like that's the adults. Like Masters, we're all just competing because we're old guys that want to get out there and still kind of like get after it. But the adults is the prize. So after, like now I just compete because I'm having fun. But for you with competing, do you think that when you get to Masters, you're no longer going to once you said like you can't compete in an adult, you're just going to kind of, I'm just not going to do this anymore.
Yeah. I mean, see, because for me, like, and I get a lot of people all the time that are like they, my comment usually they're like, is that a knock on Masters? And it's not, like, man, there's guys in Masters that are absolute animals. I wouldn't want to fight those guys, It's just that for me, like my goals and what I want are attached to the people that are competing in the adult division. So like I want to fight Kaio, I want to fight Bruno, I want to fight Mikey, I want to beat these guys. So like if they were to sign up for a master, if any of those were to sign up for a master division, I'd sign up and go just to fight them. But like to me, like my goal has always been to be a black belt world champion, to win worlds more than once and all this other stuff. So it's just like once I can't accomplish my goal, or like once I'm like I see that I've accomplished or not accomplished it, like nothing else really matters to me. Like I don't care about going to opens, I don't care about adult or master, but like my goal was just always to be an adult world champion at black belt. But I mean, there's guys in masters, like you got Lovato, you got Clark, you got all these guys that do master, they can win worlds as adult and master, which is awesome. It's just there's not many rooster weights that I see an adult that also do master. So it's hard for me to have that motivation to be like, oh, okay, I'm going to go out there and fight this guy, I mean, I've got no problem paying all this money to go to Atlanta to have one fight against Bruno at master division. I don't care, but they don't sign up at masters. So it's tough. I guess their goals are also attached to adults, but all of them are, when they retire, like Kai was like, oh, when I'm done, I'm done. He's not doing master at all. He's just going to do rooster and then he's done, So, I mean, I don't know if it's maybe because of the weight class and it's not as much depth as the other divisions, but for me, like once I can't do it, that's it. It's just done.
How's your training been? Like, what's your training look like now with running the academy? What's kind of your schedule, like a daily schedule for you?
It depends on the day. I mean, I teach every day. Sometimes I teach 2 times a day. Sometimes I teach like group privates, and I got other privates that go on. But I mean, realistically, I very rarely take class. So like I haven't like been in the mentality of a student in a very long time, which is tough for me because obviously with the amount of energy that I put into the academy, when like I'm not there, I want to spend time with my family. But I train during all of my classes, but like again, I mean, my class is an hour and a half long. So I'll do like a warm up, some drilling. I'll teach a concept or a technique, and then we'll do specific sparring and training. But I mean, for me, it's tough to go from training 3 times a day to HQ, being a student every single class, and training 6 hours a day to training 45 minutes a day, an hour and a half a day with guys that are not black belt world class competitors and feeling just as confident, you know? But like I feel like my example on the mat is really important, so I have to keep training anyway, and I've got to create challenge for myself to be able to teach my students as well. So my jiu-jitsu is still growing, but it's not growing nearly as fast as it was being in a hotbed of talent like HQ. But I mean, it's tough too because like I mean, I'm going with a blue belt who doesn't even know that he doesn't want to double guard pull. He doesn't want to do the stuff that I'm seeing at Worlds. It's really hard to create those situations where I can feel confident going competing with.
Yeah. What are you doing for yourself? Like, say you are, training, like, are you setting certain goals, like certain techniques you want to do, that type of thing?
Yeah, 100%. So usually I have goals. Like every Sunday I sit down, I figure out what I'm teaching for the week. Also my goals for when I train. Sometimes my goals are really dumb. Like last week, my goals were basically to, no matter what position I'm in, allowing the other person to gain tempo and then basically dictate the first 2 exchanges. And then from there, I'm trying to fight back and win. So, but some of my students are not like actually bad at all. They're really good. And they'll put me in a position where I'm already half past and then I start fighting. I'm like, oh, this sucks, So, But again, like, yes, it's challenging. It makes me work harder physically and mentally in certain aspects. But I'm never really just going out there saying, let's just kill everybody like A-game stuff, because a lot of people, I'm either going to run through them or like they're not even provoking certain situations. They're just going to give up sweeps or something. So depending on, like, I've got a couple of guys that are high level as well that are good, but they're not black belt world class level like HQ, and they'll give me more challenge and I'll have to challenge myself less. But still, it's just not the same. It's really hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so when did you, because you're talking about HQ, and for those listening, he's talking about ATOS. When did you go out to ATOS and begin training there full time?
It was 2014. I left Drysdale's and I went over to HQ. And then I shortly thereafter being there started teaching as well, but I didn't teach nearly as much. I just taught like maybe 6 classes a week, and then I was there for about 3.5 years before I physically moved away.
Okay, what brought you to HQ and to train with Andre?
Well, like, so if you guys remember, like, Drysdale and Kavaka made Zenith, right?
Right.
So, like, I was Zenith's first adult world champion. And then I was really gung-ho. I had a huge ego at brown belt. Drysdale's a mongoloid of a man. He's very, very brash. He's like one of the best leaders I've ever met in my life. He's a super awesome guy. But I was just like, hey, I feel like I'm not confident and prepared to win at black belt and I need to train more, And he's kind of like, well, you're winning at brown. I think you're going to win at black. And I had this moment where I didn't really believe him. And I was like, I hear what you're saying, but I still want to train more. And at this point in time, he was like, you can either take all the classes that I give you and teach them all, or you can have none of them. And it put me in a spot financially where I had to make a choice between training full time or training like I was and still making money. And then I basically had a falling out with him because I was like, oh, well, I'll just teach seminars and then train. And then he said, well, I don't support that. So I basically just had a conversation with Andre. I drove there one night, talked to him, and then I went out there during Worlds in 2014. And I mean, that was basically it. Transition was made right away, and then I got right into things. But yeah, I mean, it was a very, very quick thing. Like, just had a conversation. But all the Lloyd guys were there. I'm very close with JT. He's like, if you're always welcome here, you should definitely come out. So it was easy. I was welcomed. But it was definitely like a very, very quick thing. It wasn't manifested for months. Yeah,
and ATOS, like, if from looking at it, because obviously it started off as like his tiny little gym originally that he kind of like started, when he moved to America, and then it became like this like sort of mecca that just pulled in all these competitors from all around that came there to begin training. Why do you think that is? Like, because obviously they're super dominant when it comes to competition, and obviously that's in part because of the training and all the training partners. But why is it that so many people come into that gym and become a part of it?
I think For the most part, because HQ has a lot of, it's not just talent, they've got a lot of individual strong personalities, you know? So like you've got guys that show up and they're huge fans of Keenan, or they're huge fans of JT, they're huge fans of Hanger, you know? And like once they're in the environment, they realize like the potential growth that could take place, you know? But I mean, there's nothing secret going on in HQ. There's no like secret techniques. There's no secret things that are taking place that I haven't seen at any other academy. It's just that in terms of like person capita to being a champion, like during comp class, every single person in comp class is like definitely have won an open event, but they're either a Pan Am champion, a European champion, a world champion, a Brazilian like there's just a higher level of standard, you know, and this standard is kept across the board. But I mean, everybody's just more on the same page of realizing like, you know, if we share as much information that we can with each other now, we'll win more out there against other people, you know? So a lot of people are just basically, they're in a think tank all day and they're just brainstorming and they're sharing information with each other and they're just respectfully beating the shit out of each other as much as they can so they can grow. But I mean, it's just from my understanding of being there and not being there, the amount of training that takes place at a high standard consistently throughout the year, it's like you're camping in any other academy, you know? Like people are like, oh, this is just a regular class, but at my academy, this is like the hardest training I've ever seen in my life, you know? And it's just, but I mean, besides that, like, I mean, just all these guys teach, they share their information, they share it during their classes, they share it during training sessions. So you talk to Hanger and you basically get all this information so you never get guillotined again. And then you talk to Keenan and then you never get worm guarded again. And you take all this information into effect and then you go out there and you're so confident that you have these consistent results. And that's basically the definition of HQ.
Where did you see like the biggest improvement in your game when you went there? Was there one aspect of your jiu-jitsu game that just kind of skyrocketed?
I mean, I was able to basically make a lot of shortcuts with my techniques. So instead of like basically developing something and taking a lot of time to see the positives and the negatives about it, I would find out that information quick, you know? So like I could show something, I could do something, someone could tweak it. They could say, you should scrap this. It's very, very, very high quality. So like, it's just like, you know, you trim all the fat right away. But I mean, other than that, like, I mean, I performed well when I was physically at HQ, but like the environment is tough on the mind, you know, because like I went a month straight not scoring a single point during comp class, you know, like this is just, and for me being a competitor, you know, and having the ego that I did, I'm like, man, if I can't score during comp class, what am I going to do when I go out there, you know? So it's, the reward is huge, but the sacrifice is also big, you know, and I'd have months or weeks where I just mentally would shut down and I couldn't handle it. And then I had other times where I was the highest of the high, but the environment will definitely show you the darkness and the light all in one area. It's huge.
Yeah, the mental games is huge. Like, how did you see yourself how did you work your way out of some of those slumps that you were in?
I mean, like, I just kept my goals in mind. You know, I would have a conversation with Andre, and he's like, this is just what you're going to have to do. You know, like, no one in here is perfect. Everybody has good and bad days. And then I was like, yeah, but I've had about 35 straight, you know. And then he's like, well, you know, it may be a little bit different for you because of your size, but, you know, just remember, like, the ball will drop, and the longer it drops, the higher it's going to bounce, you know. Like, you'd always say things like this, but it was tough for me because when I switched over to ATOS, I already had won the amount of things that I won, and I had this expectation of showing up and being like the best rooster weights for all of ATOS. And then I was already wanting my black belts and I was being prepared. And then Andre literally just sat me as much as possible at Brown and just was like, hey, no, you need more time. You need more time. And I had days where I took that as a compliment. I had days where I took that in the complete opposite direction, you know, but I mean, for me, it was just like, make sure you just show up and put in the work. And if I did that every single day, the results would come. But I mean, it was tough to really be motivated and get out of bed certain days. But I mean, like, everybody goes through it there. You just got to show up and keep working. You see Josh, you see Hanger's post where he talks about, you know, it's hard. You got to show up and you got to put in the work. And that guy's winning everything. And I don't see him getting beat up in training, you know, but I mean, he says he does. So, but I mean, I think it's different for everybody. For me, like, I mean, I won't have a pity party, but like the smallest guy in there besides me is like a 160-pound dude.
Yeah, you're a small guy, man, and there's some dudes in there that are absolutely like just jacked.
And man, and they don't care. Like literally, I remember when Hulk came over to the team. Like there was one day where my comp class was like Carbolito, Hulk, Hinger, Keenan, JT, and I was like, man, like
Heavyweight, middle heavy.
Yeah, and it's not even like it was great training for them, and they didn't really care anyway because they're just like, I'm just gonna kill you, you know, and like, well, either suck it up and get better or just deal with it and cry about it. But like at the end of the day, they don't care, so I can't, you know, like. But I mean, it's tough, you know. Like I had Angelica and some other people too, but I didn't have anybody in my weight class ever to train with, and even like one or two up. I mean, Liera cuts down to lightweight, so like a lot of these guys are huge, you know, like it's different. But I mean, I know that it also makes me who I am, so I'm sure they've got their challenges as well that helps them grow. But man, it sucked absolutely.
Yeah, it's different training with smaller guys because like even like with me, like when you know, again, and maybe this isn't the best way to train or whatever, but this is the way that I like to train. You know, like when I get some of the smaller guys that I roll with, like I'm like, well, I know I can probably sit on you, right? Like, and use my weight to do that if I wanted to, right? You know, like, but I always find it way more fun with small guys to like start exchanging like finesse. Because I'm like, if I can like for a big guy, I want to move. I want to be able to move well. I want to be able to be, you know, I want to have some finesse to my movements. I don't want to have to like muscle everything through. Mm-hmm. So like when I'm rolling with a small guy, like, you know, we rolled when you came out to the gym. It's like, I want to like exchange technique and see what I can like do. I want to be like a small guy for that round. You know what I mean? And then like when I have to this way, like when I go up against like say some really big dude, then I have some finesse to my game. I'm not simply relying on just my ability to muscle through things and things like that. Plus, you know, I've seen some smaller guys get jacked up, like their necks and their shoulders and everything else, just because big guys like plop fall over them, and you know they don't take that into account because. You know, as far as training goes, man, I mean, I think it's really important. You got to look out for the guys because we only get one flesh suit to take on the big rock that we're spinning on, right?
Yep, 100%. I mean, I agree too. Like, I mean, I'll train with really big guys, and like some of them will just bulldoze me. And I'm like, cool, you know, like it is what it is. I shouldn't be in bad positions. I shouldn't be able to feel this weight, you know.
Sure.
Like, I always try to take responsibility and take the positive out of everything, you know. But then there'll be days where I look at someone and I'm like, man, if this guy doesn't try to jack me up, it's like telling a big guy to not be strong is like telling a little guy to not be fast.
Right.
You know, so like I feel like it's not fair to tell the small guy, hey, do everything you want to, and I'll kind of like simmer down my stuff, you know, because then it's like, well, then why are we training, you know? But then there's that compliment in there because like I'll go the bigger guy, and I feel like I'll be a couple steps ahead technically, and then they'll use some kind of physical force to just push me and reset, you know? And I'm like, okay, cool, you know, like
I was getting the better of that exchange.
Yeah, you know, but like at the end of the day, it's like, hey, by the way, you know, they don't give out gold medals for I kind of did good in this exchange, you know. So, but I mean, I don't attach any of my goals to absolute weight classes, so I don't really get butthurt or too upset with how I experience the rolls with guys that are 60 and 70 pounds heavier than me. But like, I mean, at the end of the day, like I said, I don't really care how someone beats me up. Some of them will still slice through me physically or technically, but like, I mean, at the end of the day, I think like it's very selfish, even though we're training with each other. But like, you got to do what's best for you. Like your goal is like, hey, I want to work on my finesse. So like, yeah, like I'd be a dick to tell you don't do that. You know, like do your thing. You know, but there'll be days where you're like, hey, like, sorry, man, I'm just gonna kill you. And I'm like, yeah, do your thing. You know, like whatever you want to do. But I'm sure it's tough for big guys too when they go with small guys because it's like, what I can just smash you. You know, and it's like, yeah, cool, please don't. Like that doesn't help out anybody. You know, but everybody's just got to basically grow to their likings and their goals for that training session. But it's the same thing for girls, I'd imagine. You know, they don't want to go with guys that smash up on them and whatnot. Like, why are you here? You know, if you're training with him, are you preparing to fight people like that? You know, but it's tough.
Yeah, I think that there's you know, people like if they stepped on the mat, I think a lot of times people would get more. I mean, and again, this is my thought on it. I mean, there's different ways to train, but like I think that some guys would maybe get something out of it if they approached like every time they got ready to roll with someone, like, what do I want to get out of this roll? Like if I'm getting ready to roll with some really big dude, okay, I've got to be patient. I got to learn how to roll with this kind of size. Well, I'm rolling with this really small guy. Well, what can I get out of this roll? You know what I mean? Because again, like I honestly won't get much out of a roll where I just if I take a 130-pound guy and just like bulldoze into him, I just don't get that much out of it. You know what I mean? But it's like if I go in the finesse thing, work on the grips, and sort of battle him in his territory, then it's like I get something out of that personally. And then if like, you know, and then vice versa. So, I mean, it just sort of a thought, just sort of bringing some purpose to the role rather than just like my goal every single time I step on the mat is simply just to obliterate every person. Again, it's my thought on it. And that might come from the simple fact that I've been a coach so long where like I've had to be really conscious of my training, because if I go into the gym just to obliterate everyone, then I can just smash my students, but whatever. But if I go in there and say, well, I'm going to have like three fresh guys on me, and every time I submit one from this certain position, then the next one comes in, and I'm going to only work on this particular position today. So if you guys smash me, good, whatever, you know, that kind of thing. But adding more purpose to the role rather than so much.
Well, I think you don't get anything from it. Like, I mean, you know that you can crush people at the gym. Obviously you're probably the best guy there, but you're usually not going to get any kind of improvement in your technique by just like, putting pressure on somebody that you already know how to do really well.
Unless there's a specific reason to put that particular pressure. Like, Kristian, you showed that one grip up from side control, which is a basic, simple grip coming under the collar. And I started playing around with that grip, taking the back, left and right, off the passes into the leg drag. I was like, oh, this is such a nice little grip. Mm-hmm. So then I started putting a lot of pressure on the hips, because then they can't come up on the hips. They can't come up, but they'll try to come up to their elbow and push away, and then boom, it's right to the back. So, just bringing purpose to it.
Right.
I don't even know where I was going with that rant, but whatever.
So how have you been like modifying your game as you've gotten a little bit older? Or like, what new wrinkles are you adding in? Are you like playing more legs? Are you trying to add new things? Anything kind of sticking out?
Not particularly. I'm either experiencing firsthand in competition, or I'm watching tape of basically the most high end jiu-jitsu that I can see, and I'm watching what these guys do, and some of it's very complex and it's unique and it's tricky, and some of it's very, very simple, and it's just like the understanding of the basics and just forcing this position and being here at the right time, So I mean, my objective for my own personal goal is to basically attempt to fight for and then win by beating the best people when I go to compete. So I'm looking to see at what level that is, and see how far away I am from that, and then this articulates into what I teach, So, I mean, for me, it's just kind of like I'll have days where I'm being creative and I'm taking something that I already do really well, and I'm going with a lower belt, and I'm basically drilling on them while they're going 100%, but I'm able to play around, And then I have days where I'm just purely focused on not letting people pass or sweep, and I'm not trying to be offensive. I'm just focusing on the understanding of guard retention and my base, But I mean, I'm basically just trying to lead by example with my goals during training of how to push onto my students, because if I can see them grow, I know that I can also do it myself. I mean, just like Chewy's saying, now that you're an instructor and a coach, you've got to be able to articulate and relay information accordingly to people. Hey, I'm going to do this round with this guy who's my size, but when I go with this other guy that's 80 pounds heavier than me, and it's something similar in training, you've got to have a different approach mentally, So a lot of my emphasis is basically on trying to understand jiu-jitsu more simply, like from a mental standpoint, so I can be as clear as I can physically. And sometimes that's just watching tape. Sometimes it's just drilling more specifically. But like I try to get away from winging things or just showing up, because that's like when who knows what will happen. But nothing specific. One day it'll be a leg, one day it'll be a lapel, one day it'll be no-gi, and it's a seatbelt, But I mean, no matter what it is, it's just trying to increase the quality of every position as much as I can.
Yeah, so you should be more crisp, be more, succinct, kind of know what you want to do and do it really well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like the thing is like if I can create as much challenge for myself, I'll be like, okay, I'm going to tap somebody with this seatbelt, with being ear to ear and seatbelt, and if I can do that on every single person I go with, no matter what their size, like that's huge. Then I can articulate that information to my students as well. So it's like it's a win-win situation there, But I mean, there's days for sharpening what you already have. There's days for creating new so you can sharpen it later. But it's just got to be a constant evolution and growth in all areas. I want to be as well-rounded as possible so I can be as I can show up as great of instructors I can be for my students. That's the goal.
What are your goals still for like now at this point? Is there anything that you're still like worlds? I mean, what do you still want to accomplish? Like if you had to say, I won this championship, I would be complete. Is there anything out there that you think?
I mean, I definitely want to win a black belt world title in the gi. That's important for me. I want to be able to put in like a 1 year hard, consistent, focused training camp, keep my body as healthy as possible, and show up and say, like I did my best today. Winning, I think would be a result of that, but I definitely feel like I'll show up and I'll feel like definitely complete with that. But I definitely want to go to ADCCs. So this ADCC, I'm on like the reserve list because there's 2 ATOS guys in my division, so I wasn't able to get the invitation. So, but I want to be like the lightest person in history to go to like ADCCs, So I want to show up and be lighter than everybody else and then like be able to perform well, But I mean, mostly now my goals that I have jiu-jitsu wise are like with my students, you know, being able to bring my students to worlds, being able to see my students on the podium for events, being able to help them as much as they can. But I mean, like I said, I'm getting towards the end of my goal for jiu-jitsu and competing. So like, it's just my main focus now from this point forward is just black belt worlds in the gi. There's nothing else for me.
That's cool. So like with the students and stuff like that, what, like, how do you see things growing like from here? Because obviously, like, you're wanting to, like, I imagine, take the stuff that you've learned, right, and then basically pass it down to them and then send them on their way. Do you have some guys that you think will, you know, in the near future, or maybe like in a couple of years or something like that, be able to like start scratching at like the worlds at different belt levels, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a handful of people right now that definitely have potential that I've invested 2.5, 3 years into, you know. Definitely see like, hey, like, you know, if you were to be disciplined and like have a diet and you were to be competing in this weight class, I feel confident that I could see you on the podium at Worlds. You know, I've taken them to like a New York Open, I've taken them to different Opens and they've won, you know. But I mean, my academy's so young that it's really hard for me to have world class purples and brown belts, because then they're not really my students, they showed up, you know. So I've got some really, really strong physical, technical blue belts that are like definitely going to be able to make a huge case for being on the podium for major events. But like, I honestly, I don't have a lot of guys that are full-time competitors. You know, a lot of my guys, they work jobs, they show up, they love jiu-jitsu, and they compete like, you know, maybe 3 or 4 times a year. But I mean, a lot of those guys don't have the goals of like winning a world title. You know, I can't tell them they have to, but I tell them that they can. You know, I've got a couple of people like, hey, if you put in some work, you could definitely do it.
That's a good question, actually, or something that popped up when you're talking about this. Like, because, you know, the idea of a full-time competitor, right? Like, a lot of people will sort of like fantasize about this guys getting into jiu-jitsu, and you live that life. Like, how do people, like, because, you know, people are going out to ATOS, like San Diego, which is not like it's not a cheap place to live. How do they like get by? Like, what do they do to like make enough money to compete full time and to not do anything else?
I mean, you'll definitely see, I saw a lot of kids, younger guys, 17, 18, 19, 20, whatever it may be, will take everything they can. They'll move to HQ, and they don't really, because of their lack of maturity, they don't really like cover all their bases, you know. Then they get there, they're there, but they're like, well, how do I sustain this now, you know? And they ended up leaving a place where they were training more consistently because they had their life more ingrained there, and they show up in San Diego. Now they're working a job 45 hours a week with a horrible schedule that they're only able to train once or maybe twice every other day. So it's they move there for a purpose they're not able really to achieve. But the guys that are competing consistently, that are like doing their best to win, even if they're not world champions, like those guys just they hustle, and they have some kind of thing that makes them be able to financially survive, whether it's sponsorship money, whether it's running some kind of racket once a month with affiliate sales or something like that. But I mean, for the most part, like a lot of the guys that you see that are like HQ members, like on the A team, all they do is jiu-jitsu. They don't do anything else. They teach, they have sponsors, and they just suck it up. Maybe they do some kind of trade deal with Andre or something. But I mean, that it's not about getting free membership, because like, I mean, it's expensive, but I mean, you're talking about where are you going to live? What are you going to, you know, there's kids there that are living out of their cars. There's kids there that like Connor just like moved back, and he like had this van. It was like on Flow Grappling. They showed he's living out of his van, so he can basically have more time to spend on the mat rather than working at all. But I mean, I don't know how they did it. I ate ramen maybe once every other day because I couldn't afford to eat it every day. You know, like I just sucked it up and just did what I had to do. But a lot of these kids, they just make it work, I guess, to a degree. But the guys that are showing up to train that aren't training full time, none of those guys are winning. You know, because they went from something good to something not as great. The quality's higher, but they're not seeing it as much. You know, and
frequency goes down.
Well, 100%.
Because that's something I get questions about that all the time from people about like, how do I become a full-time competitor? You know, and I'm like, man, that's a tough road. Like, it's not an easy road, man. You've got to, like you said, you've got to be able to be okay with a very Spartan existence and just getting by. You know, I know some of my buddies elsewhere, like, you know, they pack into a house. You know what I mean? Like, so like they have a place that they rent or whatever, and they're packed in there tight, you know, like a couple guys to a room kind of thing, where it's snug. You know what I mean? So it's like you have to be okay with that kind of stuff.
Well, I mean, you have to. If you don't make those sacrifices, you're not even going to have the opportunity to show up.
Right.
What do you guys, and this is a question for both of you being, instructors, what do you look for in a student, like to say that guy could be, world level or like world champion level competitor? Like, Chewy, is there anything you see? Is there a certain belt level even that you look at and you say, that guy's got potential? And Kristian, for you as well, what do you look for particularly?
As far as me goes, man, obviously, Chad was probably, is my best student. And so, he's won some stuff, but I think with, any of the students that have ever done anything, I mean, everybody's a little different, but it's like you watch a couple things. One, do they show up? Just did they show up? And then you watch like when a lot of times guys that talk too much, like when early on, I call them shooting stars because they'll come in and they'll talk and be like, yeah, man, I'm all about this jiu-jitsu lifestyle. I'm going to do this, blah, 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 blah. Look at me on Instagram posting shit. And then they blow out. It's like because they don't have an intrinsic reason that drives them to do it, whether they're having a good day or not. Like obviously, like Kristian, you were training, having terrible days or terrible months, but you get up because there's some internal drive that has nothing to do with anyone else that you get up and you do the damn thing. And then you watch how they deal with failure. You know what I mean? Because that really is going to define the person. How do you do? Like, how do you deal when things suck? How do you deal when things aren't going your way? Do you get back up? Do you deal with it, or do you simply fold because maybe you I've seen a lot of guys where they put this they'll go out for their first tournament and they put all these expectations on themselves, and then they go out there and their ego gets deflated because they thought that they were someone that they weren't, and they go out there and instead of like, okay, dust it off, let's get back up and do it, I'm gonna go do something else. You know what I mean? And that's especially with the culture now where everything is like instant. I can Google something, I can find the answer, in instant gratification. And then they get into something like jiu-jitsu where it's like, okay, I want to be a jiu-jitsu guy. But then you realize this shit's hard work. And you've got to be willing to put in some serious grinding years before you really get something back from it. And you got to be okay with that.
Yeah, and it's getting harder. I mean, there's more people, jiu-jitsu's growing immensely. And like now, I mean, that was never, even when I started 10 years ago, that was never a thing like somebody can make money off jiu-jitsu. You never went into, jiu-jitsu thinking you were going to make a career out of it. Mm-hmm. And the same, we talked about that before. It's just hard, but now it's possible, but it's also, again, very hard to achieve on a different scale, just because there's so many more people doing it.
Yep. What do you think, man? What do you look for in a student that you think is going to have potential?
I mean, it runs linear with your stuff, like you just want to basically see the character of the person, like, do they have the work ethic? Do they have the ability to, take failure and success and put them together to create more success? I mean, but like it's nothing that's specific. Like I don't look at someone and go like, oh, you've got it, But like
right.
I've seen people with absolutely awful jiu-jitsu that have immense dedication and motivation and persistence, and like you're like, hey, like your jiu-jitsu sucks, but like if you keep doing this, like and you're listening with an open mind, like you're gonna make it work,
Mm-hmm.
And like. Those are the guys that aren't naturally talented that put in the work, and they're great athletes, And I mean, I see all the time guys with potential and talent that just throw it out the window. Just like I'm sure you've seen it too. But it's like a lot of it's just about persistence, because like Worlds comes once a year, and like the likeliness of someone winning Worlds is very, very small. And then you got guys that want to win Worlds or compete at Worlds multiple times. Like it's a thing that's about consistency, and if you can't consistently show up with the right mindset, regardless of your success or failures, you're not even going to make it. You're not going to make it to your black belt. You're not going to make it to your brown belts. You're going to quit. You're going to be like, this is dumb. This is stupid. I want to put in the work, But I mean, it's tough because like jiu-jitsu, you're paying money to basically suck, like you're beat up, you're experiencing failure, and it's like, I need to pay more money to go and compete, So like, if you got a guy that kind of like understands it and does it anyway, he's definitely way ahead of the curve. And that's definitely something you can build the foundation on top of.
Yeah. You said the talent thing. It's funny. Like I was thinking about this while you said that. I've had so many students come in over the years who have like watching them early on. I'm like, dude, this guy's he's got like a knack for this thing right off the bat. I know that when I first started jiu-jitsu, my buddy and I started together from wrestling. He was a smaller guy, and we had trained for like 2 weeks at jiu-jitsu. We'd wrestled for 4 years. He was doing spider guard and tournaments and triangling people. Like 2 weeks. And then I'm over there like trying to finagle a Kimura or key lock out of the way. Like I look like a dumb lumbering idiot. And he had way more talent naturally, but he quit. And I watch so many students do the same thing where like they'll come in and they've got that natural knack for it. But then, you know, whenever they get to that sort of crossroads where things actually get tough and they're not ready for it, then they drop off. Whereas I've seen so many guys that come in that are like so uncoordinated and they're not in the best shape and they don't really have the natural gift of it. And I think they're just so used to sucking at stuff that they don't give a shit. They're just like, whatever, I suck. I'm used to sucking. I'll just come in because I enjoy doing it. And then like you give that guy like 2-3 years, and all of a sudden like he's he's trashing guys that come in off the street like for the first, like just easy, you know, like, and he's winning tournaments and doing well at a purple or a blue belt or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I fought plenty of dudes like that. I look at him and I go, man, like I look like I'm some guy that was in prison with tattoos all over, and I'm tough, and I can just beat the shit out of this guy. And this got glasses on. He looks like he's a nerd, doesn't know what's going on, probably doesn't even know what jiu-jitsu is, and the dude's really good, you know. And you're like, oh shit, you know, like, I mean, there's just not this physical aura to it anymore. Like you can look at someone sometimes like, oh, they're probably good, but like, man, like jiu-jitsu it's just as much mental as it is physical. You got guys that are like, they want to geek out and they're really good and they have persistence. Like, yeah, I'll just do it, you know. Like, I mean, like, you've got guys that are not confident that do well, and you got guys that are confident that do well, but like the only consistency is like their mindset after that they were tested, you know. So like if they can keep using that and keep coming forward, like you're gonna grow. It's like inevitable. There's no way you can't be successful with that.
Yeah, I think both you guys kind of mentioned the big thing is consistency, just showing up. Even, you know, and that's the thing. Like,
that's anything.
Yeah, well, you talk about that too.
Like you just said earlier, ain't no secrets. We're not doing secret techniques. We're just training really hard with a lot of good people. Right. Like people try to like overcomplicate everything. Like if you want to do anything, fucking just do it all the time. Do it every day, and you'll get better at it, guaranteed.
Show up when you don't want to. It
doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah, when you don't want to.
Like anything that I can take, anything that I have that's worth anything, that's worth a shit, is like only come about because I just simply found a way to do it every single day, regardless of whatever. Just it's so simple. But it's like it takes discipline.
But it's hard.
It's the definition of life. You know, like you've got a relationship with someone, you've got a house, like you've got to pay your bills consistently. You've got to be putting in work with your wife consistently. You've got to be able to train your dog. If you don't have consistency, you don't expect fucking ridiculous results, you know? Right. But like how many times as a lower belt I always thought like, man, I wish I could have trained more. I would have gotten better faster, you know? And it's like, did I have more time? Maybe. Did I not? You know, I did whatever, but like I don't know anybody that showed up and ever regretted training. Right. I've always heard people that regret not training, you know, and that's half the battle. 100%.
Yeah, you never like leave, you know, if you have a shitty day and you train, it's usually better. You know, your day's always going to be better for the most part.
Those are usually the best training sessions. Yeah. I mean, for me personally, you know, like I'm like, man, I don't want to be here. I think this is stupid. You know, like I don't want to be disciplined. I just don't feel like doing it today. And then I train and I fuck someone up and I'm like, oh man, like this was a great day. And it's like, whatever, you know, but like that, and some days I show up and I'm super sharp and I get the shit beat out of me. And it's like, it's just consistency. You just got to show up.
What do you think about that? Because I've had several days that like I clearly remember them. They stand out in my memory, like where like there was one that I had as a brown belt, and I'll ask if you've had one of these too. So like several days where like I would go into the gym. I felt like shit. I literally was thinking to myself, I don't want to be here, but I had competitions coming up, so I'm like, get my ass to the gym. And I remember there was a black belt that I used to train with when I was a brown belt. Him and I would like roll like pit bulls. We both wrestled, and it was like whoever got on top, that was the dude that won, and we headbutt each other and everything else and be beat up. We were getting ready to roll on this day, and I remember joking with him, saying, all right, man, don't hurt me too bad today, like, because I ain't gotten anything for you. So we start rolling, and I don't know if it's just because I had no expectation, but I just was like, I'm going to take my beating, but I'm going to see if I can slow him down. I ended up sweeping the guy over and over and over again. And then he afterwards, like, he got up, and he was like, I was supposed to grab a new partner. He's like, no, we're going again. And then I did the same thing. And he's like, no, we're rolling. He wouldn't let me roll with anybody else because, like, on Thursday, he whooped my ass. On Saturday, like, I'm getting the better of him pretty fluidly. And I've had several times like that where, like, I didn't really want to go to the gym, but I did. And I kind of went in there with a very low expectation because I was like, I'm going to suck today. I'm just going to kind of be okay with it. Do you think there's something to that, like stepping on the mat and, like, not, like, being like, all right, I'm sharp, I'm ready to go after it and whatever, opposed to, like, I'm here, I'm going to do my best. I don't have it today, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I've definitely experienced what you just said. Where like I'm just like, you know what? Like, I'll make almost like an insecure comment. I'm like, oh man, like, you know, here we go. I'm sure you're gonna pass my guard. You're gonna do that worm guard shit, you know? Yeah. Like, but I mean, and I've also had days where I think the opposite. You know, I mean, I like what shows up for me is like when I train with somebody and then I try to have it like, because it's usually the most detrimental like the most potential shit that I have is like the conversation I have with myself after a training session, you know, because I didn't talk to any of my training partners. I didn't ask them if I did well, if I did like, hey, what were you working on? What are your goals? Because like I may slice through a guy's guard, but maybe his goals made that easy for me. You know, like a lot of people rely on other people for information, you know, and they just like, oh, look, I beat him up. I passed his guard. Like, yeah, got it. But like, what if the guy didn't give a shit? You know, was it an easy guard pass, you know? But I had days where like I would specifically ask my training partners, like, hey, I know this may be weird, but like, what do you feel like I was focusing on during our training session, you know? And I feel like if they could convey to me clearly what my goal was, that I did a good job. It didn't even matter if I succeeded or failed in terms of winning or losing. But like if a guy's like, man, like I just feel like no matter what you would do on top, you just wouldn't let me establish a guard. And I'm like, oh shit, that's all I was working on. Maybe he then got a guard and swept me anyway. But the fact that I could convey that physically to him, I knew that I was growing, you know? And like when I had sessions like that, I felt like I would jump 4 or 5 belt ranks in a day, you know? But like the days when I wasn't clear with my goals and then I showed up and I had like some safety nets in there and I was like, fuck it, you know, whatever, like, oh, it's okay, he's bigger than me. Those are the days I didn't grow at all, you know? So like I definitely see that the ability to like have any type of mindset when you show up to training, but like it just has to be consistent all the way through. Like, you know, like I can't show up one way then come out later a different way and expect something, you know, but I'm sure it's easier too to understand the fact that other people also have goals, you know? So it's like, who knows how they mesh? Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, sometimes it works out for me, sometimes it works out for them, you know? And maybe all they want to do is wrestle, you know? And I'm like, oh shit, all I want to do is pull guard, you know? So it's like, we both kind of accomplished what we did, you know? Like, who fucking knows? But for me, it's just clear communication, you know? And it's like, our being able to talk to that guy and him tell me afterwards what was going on is really important.
Yeah, it's interesting. It seems like it's just the best way for you, you know, accomplishing your goal. I mean, really, because you can convince yourself that you maybe did that, but somebody with no information of what you're doing, and they're able to convey that to you. That's, I mean, that means you doing what you wanted to do, what you set out to do. So that's great.
Yeah, I mean, like, but I would have like, especially during that like month and a half phase where I wouldn't score any points, like I would just have goals because it got so bad where I'm like, okay, I'm not going to score today. I had zero confidence. And then I'd be like, you know what? I just can't Lier sweep me for 20 seconds. I got to be able to stay on top for 20 seconds, 30 seconds, 40 seconds, you know? And then like, I talked to Lier afterwards and I'm like, hey man, like, you know, I've been trying to do this. And he's like, oh, you're doing a good job. I'm just figuring it out faster than you, you know? So like, there's gotta be some kind of success in there every single time. But like, if I just showed up, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna get my shit pushed in and it got pushed in anyway. I'm like, yeah, look, I created what I said, you know, but it's tough because like when you're having bad days, you still need positivity. You know, if you don't have that, you're not gonna show up the next day. You know, it'll be tough.
Yeah, and especially when you're having those bad days, kind of like you were just saying, like if you know if you're not feeling it, like setting smaller goals that are like more reasonable. You know what I mean? That you can actually maybe have a chance of hitting. That's going to do a lot more for the positive momentum. So then you're like, okay, well, all right, I did 20 seconds on top. I feel a little bit better. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, that's what I used to do when I would come into my gym when I used to roll with my coaches that would just trash me. I'd be like, okay, my goal is to like not get swept for the first like minute of the roll or something, you know? And because I know I'm going to get my ass beat, but if I can just do that one little thing, I would be pumped because I'm like, I did that right. Or like, I remember as a white belt, I would say to myself, like, if I can get on top and just not get submitted from guard, like I'll just sit there and try to basically not get submitted, but that's all I'm going to do for today. You know, like little goals instead of, you know, I got to try to beat this guy, you know, just something.
100%.
Yeah, you're building little victories.
Well, they talk about that, right? Like they talk about giving yourself actually manageable goals that are like reasonable. There's like a lot of momentum for that, right? That's the whole idea behind like, you know, Jordan Peterson and there's the other guy like Admiral McRaven, like make your bed in the morning because it's just something so small that you made your bed. You did something. Now keep going. Little small things to kind of keep everything running. I don't make my bed in the morning though.
Yeah. Well, and you got to think about it, man. Jiu-jitsu and progression in anything is never linear. It's always ups, downs, you know, peaks, valleys. It never is. If it is, then you're not either challenging yourself enough or you're not doing something that's...
What do you mean it's not linear? You can't show me how to get my black belt in 3 years?
Chewy, we talked about this. You already have your black belt, by the way. No, like... You know, it's funny, like me still having a brown belt.
How about 5 years?
Fuck that. Doesn't matter. Who gives a shit? I don't like, it's funny how your mentality as a lower belt changes. Like you're a white belt, you're like, fuck, I want my blue belt so bad.
I never wanted that fucking blue belt. I never wanted any of the belts. I was like, let me
you're
stay.
just an oddball.
Whatever, dude. I was like, let me stay, because I remember my coach was a purple, and I remember seeing all those guys, and they would trash me during rolls, and I was like, dude, I don't want to be the next belt, because then I gotta step my game up. I remember like when I got good as a white belt, I was like, sweet, I'm like the king of the guys that suck. I'll be there.
This guy's talking about this shit, and he's the one that does it. Like we go to the Charlotte Open, and I like had a good tournament, and I was like, all right, fucking yeah, I'm getting comfortable now. I'm feeling good. And then brown belt. I'm like, damn it, Chewy, why do you do this?
You're a fucking purple belt for like forever.
No, it wasn't like 2 years, 3 years. I don't know. That's the thing. Well, the point I'm trying to make is like people don't realize like once you get to a black belt, if you do I'm like, man, I'd love to be a purple belt again or a blue belt again, learn a little more and get a little better at each stage. I don't know. I just like the process so much. I thought it was enjoyable. And I didn't want
the process. The process doesn't change just because the belt's around your waist.
Right.
Anyway, so.
But again, we're looking at like little victories or little achievements or accomplishments. It's like I don't know. I appreciate those accomplishments a lot, and they just I wanted to savor that belt for a little while longer. I don't know why. At purple belt,
just do it at brown. Go out and compete at brown. You'll be good to go.
Well, like you said, man, and I'm not making excuses, dude. Kids and businesses and all kinds of shit, and you're like, your progression, and everybody's got different levels, and there's levels to every single belt rank. But it's just like your progression. You notice like it's not as much, or not as quickly, or not as significant as it was when I was, a guy that didn't have any kids and was just training all the time. So it's tough.
It really is tough. I think Chewy probably can contest to like the amount of things that you can learn as a white belt obviously is not the same that you can learn at black.
Yeah.
Like, it's obviously infinite, and it's endless, but like the amount of shit that exists at white, like there's such a huge level of not knowing what you don't know at white that it's like astronomical. And then you get to black and you're like, I definitely know what I don't know now, and I know I can keep learning, but like it's different. Like your growth is going to slow down, So, it gets tough, but like at the same time, like, man, belts are fucking stupid, like whatever, like just go up the belt and go whatever, but like, the tough thing is that whatever you're going to tell yourself, you're going to believe, so it's like, oh shit, like, I'm not ready for my brown. It's like, well, if you knew that, you would already be a brown belt. They just gotta fucking go. I don't think anybody really enjoys being promoted. Like I know, like Chewy said, like I didn't want my belt. Like I got my belt, and the second I got that belt, I was like, what do I need to do for the next one? Because like I was like, I would just want to be a black belt, but I sucked. So it was like, well, do I really want this belt? But everybody's different, but like the key there, like I said, it's just that fucking growth, But it gets different as you go up. Black belt, man, you can ask Chewy, the level of black belt in terms of like internal is astronomical. Like there's white belt, black belts.
Yes.
It's crazy, man.
Yeah.
It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah, it's because especially one is you get higher up and higher up, you're in that diminishing return where like the same amount of effort that you would put into training as a white belt, you would get so much more growth in your game. As a black belt, because you're so good, you could put in the same amount of effort, but you get a lot less because again you're already so good. So you really got to dig. It's like when you look at like heavy power lifters and stuff where they're like putting these training sessions just to get an extra 5-pound plate on the side of the bar, whereas like as a novice lifter, he starts lifting. He lifts weights for 4 weeks on a shit program, and boom, he's like throws like 45 pounds on.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as black belt go, there's such a wild variance between like the skill of black belts. Like I've rolled with black belts and like sort of like scratched my head like, dude, you're a black belt, really? Like you're terrible, and it's not to be mean. It's just like I for me, like if I'm gonna hold black belt, I want to be good. You know what I mean? And this is the guy that I'm thinking of. Like he had no like physical ailments. He was just not very good, right? It's like someone just sped the process up too fast. And then there's other black belts where it's like I can't touch you. Like I'm not bad. Like I'm pretty good, but it's like there's some guys that I've rolled with where I'm like, man, like this sucks. Like I put in so much effort into this, and then there's the guys like you lurking around there. It's like, damn, you know what I mean? It's motivating and like demotivating at the same time.
Humbling.
100%. Like you get, like just like you're saying, like you get dudes where like it's the standard was just different for them, and it's like I got my black belt. Like I absolutely hate that saying where it's like a black belt is a white belt that never quit, because it's like, yeah, cool. If you never stop training, you'll just get your black belt, right? But like at the same time, just know that once you get your black belt, that there's definitely an internal community where everybody's looking at you and they're like, there's levels in here, you know, and like maybe the outside world, the white belt's like, yeah, you're a black belt, but like when you're on the mat, the truth comes out, you know, like whether it's the way you teach, whether it's what you teach or it's how you train or how you compete, but like, man, the levels of black belt, go to HQ, you will see traveling black belts that come to HQ that get mauled by 17-year-old blue belts, mauled, you know, and it's like, I can't imagine what that does to their ego, you know, like, hey, I showed up, I paid like a $95 drop-in fee for the day and blah, 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 and then I got beat up by a 17-year-old blue belt who's been training for 3 years just in this environment. I've been training for 15. It's like, man, I would quit jiu-jitsu 100%. I wouldn't even second guess it, because but I mean, jiu-jitsu is everything to me, you know, but like maybe to that guy is like, yeah, I just hang out, I do my thing, I'm a hobbyist, but like the level of black belts is just astronomical. I mean, it's at every belt though, you know, like there's blue belts and there's blue belts, you know, like, but
well, and
I mean,
the belt's such a subjective thing, because man, you think about some of those blue belts out there at ATOS, those guys at another time period would have been black belts or something. I mean, like, you know, like you look at the level of jiu-jitsu, it's steadily ramped up so fast, you know what I mean? Like, because it's gained so much popularity. There's a little bit of money in it now, you know, as far as kind of circulating to help people do it. And then you get these like, you know, basically these like powerhouse gyms like ATOS and stuff like that are just, you know, producing monsters. I mean, it just raises the overall level of it. And you see these, like you said, you see these blue belts and purple belts and you're like, damn, those dudes are so good. You know, like, especially when you compare them to, say, the guys that were like black belts when when I first started or when you first started. It's insane.
Two completely different level of black belts from now, 5 years ago, 5 years before that. You know, I mean, it's like your analogy that you're saying with like the weightlifter, right? It's just that ATOS is bringing guys at blue belt right to that black belt, putting on that 5-pound plate, you know, stage in their career. But they're doing that now right away at their blue belt, you know? So like the techniques that they're being shown, the concepts that they're being forced to do, the drilling that they're being created for, they're already black belts. Now they're just going to simmer and sit there for 5 years until they get the black. Most of the guys now that are going to like look at Keenan. Keenan has not lost a fight. He lost to Mergali at Brazilian Nationals recently, and then he lost to Gordon at Nogi Pan Ams. But the kid in his weight class like hasn't lost, and since I've known him. He's won everything at purple belt. He's going to be at black belt. He's won almost everything at black belt his first year. Like, that kid has been just as good now as he was 3 years ago. He just needed his time to meet his requirements for his belts, you know, like that is super scary. Yeah. I'm sitting over here busting my ass thinking about taking 20 cc's of steroids to try and keep up. And this kid's just walking around. He's just like, this is easy, you know? And it's just like, because he doesn't know any better. The habit was created for him right away. He wasn't just thrown out in the deep end like you and me when we were younger. Like, oh, just go train, you know? Just like, oh, here's a technique, go train. It's like, man, like he was showed barambolos and leg drags and all this stuff right away. That's his foundation. Not like we did, you know?
Right. There was a program put in place. And again, that's where, like, again, the training had a lot more purpose to it rather than just, you know, beating the shit out of each other. There's a lot more drilling involved and all that other stuff. Yeah.
I mean, it's changed tremendously. Like, I think Guy Mendes just had an interview where he said, like, with each year that we continue, the depth of the new student that's coming out is 10 times better than the guy that's in the year beforehand. So all these teens that are coming out that are blue purples and going into their browns, like, those are the future of jiu-jitsu. But the difference in skill between them and the guys that have been training in their divisions for twice as long as them, it's astronomical. Yeah. Those kids are crazy good.
Who are those teenagers from ATOS? They're super popular right now.
The Tulo Twins.
Yeah, man. Like, yeah. I was watching some like highlight video of those dudes or something got posted. I'm like, man, that's so sick. You know, like you just, you know, because even like for instance, Chad, when Chad was a teenager, you know, we would regularly put him into adult divisions. And, you know, I remember thinking about that. Like, he was like 15 years old submitting, you know, there was one point he was 16 years old and he submitted a couple black belts with his triangle. You know what I mean? And you're just like, man, like, you know, it just, because at that point he's got a black belt level technique. He just has to like round out a little bit more. But, you know, it's a tough pill to swallow. You see those guys.
Oh, man, especially I think that's why people retire, you know, because like you got a guy that like will fight someone and he gets beat and you're like, man, like I've been putting in my work. I can't believe I got beat like that. I should just hang it up, you know. But like, I mean, Chad's jiu-jitsu was amazing, you know, like, and you see him go out there and you see him murder people, and you're like, man, this is crazy. You know, like the Rutulo brothers, like I've seen them beat traveling black belts that come in and get trained, you know, and it's like they're 15, 16 years old, 17. It's like, at what point in time do you go like, oh man, okay, it's okay that they're this good? Because now they're not even the exception anymore. They're most the example, you know, and it's tough. That's super tough. I mean, like even AOJ has a crazy team division team where it's like girls and guys that are like Jess Khan, purple belt. She's like 17 years old. She hasn't lost anything in a long time. She's going to all these tournaments and just smashing everybody. And it's like, man, she's already a black belt, you know, but like she doesn't meet her requirements yet. She's got to wait. And when she gets her black belt, she's going to be a monster, you know, but like you got Jonathan, you got Tylen, you got all these guys that are absolute savages because they were given nothing but black belt information since day one. And that's just what they build off of. It's crazy. Absolutely.
Yeah, I started with a purple belt when I first started training. When you first got into jiu-jitsu, what was the skill level of the guy that you were learning from?
He was good, but it was very like traditional jiu-jitsu. Like, you know, it was like
self-defense or something, or
something along those lines. But like, even then, like I knew like, cause like obviously once I got my blue belt, I was like, oh, there's jiu-jitsu outside of where I'm at, you know, but like, then I'd go watch a Grappler's Quest or I go to an IBJJF and these guys were doing different techniques. I'm like, I don't even know that position. What are they doing? You know? And it's just like, but because of the environment that I was in, it was more traditional, you know, it was like not a Gracie self-defense jiu-jitsu, but it was like not far off of that, you know, like, you know, oh, we don't do this, we do this, you know, like, oh, leg locks are frowned upon. It's like, I don't even know what leg locks are, but okay, you know, like whatever it may be. But I mean, but the level was so low, you know, like I went to the reason why I moved away from where I started compared to where I started my journey, where I kept continuing my journey, was because I literally went to an IBJJF event and I got smoked. And I was like, man, what am I doing? Like, if this is what I want to do, like, is there something else outside of this? And I put in my research and I found like, oh, Cyborg's the best in the world right now. I'll go train with him, you know? And then that's where I went. And then like, I went from there to Drysdale because it's just like, if these guys are the best in the world, they've got the best information. I don't want to be learning from guys that's second or third place because they're losing.
Yeah. When you went down to Cyborgs, like, again, kind of going back to it, because I imagine there's some young guy out here, like, or woman, like, listening. When you went to Cyborgs, how did you figure that all out? Did you go down there and just say, okay, I'm going to work some part-time job, or did you have some connections down there, or, you know, how'd that all happen?
Man, I had absolutely nothing. So, like, I had money saved up, you know, and I basically try to put myself on the path of most success as possible, but I knew I was going to sacrifice, you know. I knew I wasn't a world champion. I didn't have anything to give to Cyborg that was going to be like, hey, not only will I let you train for free, but I'll give you a job. So like I didn't expect anything, but I messaged him. I talked to him for like a couple of weeks. I said, I want to move down there. And he just like, yeah, man, whatever. Like, I'm sure he gets it all the time, you know, but I showed up and he was like, yeah, sign a contract, start paying. And I'm like, okay, you know, and then like, I just showed up and I worked so hard in my first month I didn't pay any membership before that. And I was like, oh, here you go. And then he's like, oh man, what's going on? I'm like, oh, I'm struggling, you know, I'm trying to make this work. And he's like, oh, don't worry about paying your membership anymore. You know, do this, do that, you know, and I was already taught how to teach. So I was trying to teach more and make money that way. But again, I mean, I struggled until I was a brown belt in terms of being able to be in a situation to where I wasn't trying to figure out if I was going to have to cut weight because I already wasn't eating, you know what I'm saying? Like, but it sucked. I mean, it sucked for years. I mean, I didn't get to Drysdale's until I was already training for 5 years. So 5 years of just struggling, trying to make shit work between figuring out jiu-jitsu or a job. I just chose to never work. I just didn't work.
Yeah.
I just refused to.
And how'd the whole thing with Drysdale happen? Like, how did that come about?
It was just, because you guys just had Ruben on, but like I was at Cyborgs and I was literally, and then I was probably about 15 pounds lighter than I am now, but I was just getting my shit pushed in. Like these guys were murdering me. And Cyborg was like, man, like, you know, you have great potential. You work very hard, but like this environment is going to be physically tough for you, you know? And I was like, okay. And maybe I'll like look into something different, you know? And Las Vegas popped into my head. You got Drysdale. He tapped out Marcelo. He's the ADCC champion, all this other stuff. And it's like, well, maybe I'll go there, you know? And I reached out to him and he said, yeah, you're more than welcome to come. I showed up. I asked for a job. He said no. He laughed at me, you know, and I just kept showing up. And then finally I was there when someone wasn't able to make it to class. And then I taught a class and he asked me to be an instructor. And then from there just built, you know, but I mean, I basically just showed up. Like I was just that cocky, arrogant kid where I was like, hey, I'm not going to take no for an answer. I want to be a world champion, you know, and I did that until I created it, and that was it, you know. But I mean, Cyborg helped me out tremendously. So did Drysdale, so did Andre. But you just had to do it, you know. Like, but I wasn't like going out hanging out with girls. I wasn't partying. I didn't have any money to spend anyway, you know. Like, I didn't have any responsibilities. All I had to do was pay for food, you know. So I just did whatever it took to do that.
That's cool, man. Yeah, because it's a lot of sacrifice and single-mindedness. You know, like you're staying like focused on what you're doing. You know, like it was the same thing. Like talking to some different people that have asked me questions of stuff about like training jiu-jitsu and stuff, and I talked to them. I was like, man, I ate shit like when I was younger, you know, like where it's just like I didn't do a lot of things. I didn't have the money for it. Like, you know, I didn't have the money for all this crap that people would normally spend their money on. I was like, I had to spend what little I had on tournaments, on travel, on jiu-jitsu, whatever it was. I paid my dues just like everybody else, you know, like, and eventually, you know, like you said, you keep training and you get an opportunity and you just kind of run with it. That's cool.
Yeah, I mean,
that's cool.
That's all. I mean, that's all you can do. I mean, because I didn't win shit, so I didn't have any sponsors. I wasn't making any money. I mean, even back then, like there was no tournaments that were giving out cash prizes. You know, like nobody as a purple and brown belt, you weren't seeing anybody teaching seminars at purple and brown. It was only for black belts back then. You know, like I didn't have shit. I literally had nothing. So it was just like, and then Drysdale would be like, oh yeah, like here you go, like, you know. But like, and then once I invested in myself to become as best of a teacher as I could and best of a competitor as I could. It was just creating as much opportunity and taking advantage of it when the time arose. But I mean, like now I think it's a little bit easier, you know, because I see purple belts and even some blue belts teaching workshops and trying to make money. So it's a little bit easier to get into the scene. But I mean, back then, like, fuck, you were crazy if you were trying to make money doing jiu-jitsu.
Mm-hmm.
It was impossible unless you owned your own academy, you know?
What would you describe like your teaching style? Like as a coach, kind of describe yourself. Like how do you get the most out of your students or kind of get them to do what you want them to do?
I mean, a lot of my jiu-jitsu is just about like clear communication, you know? So I basically, when I teach mostly conceptually, you know, I talk about like the understanding of the position. I talk about like, you know, not taking advantage of people's mistakes, but rather creating very, very small amount of options for that person and then making sure you know what they are, you know? So like, oh, you know, we're in side control. If you're not controlling this elbow, they can hip escape, whether they successfully do or they don't know how to or they can't. That's not your responsibility, so don't rely on them to do one of those, you know? But I mean, I'll stay in a position for like, you know, like 3 or 4 weeks conceptually talking about a bunch of different ideas from there, my mindset from there, thought process from there, you know, and I just tried to build as clear structured habits as I can for people, you know, like white to blue. I focus on the fact that like, don't even try to do any offense, focus on not having someone do offense on you, you know, don't get swept, don't get passed, you know? And then blue to purple is like understanding your holes and creating those things and whatnot. But I mean, a lot of it's just about clear communication, being able to answer questions clearly, having an environment where people feel like they can ask questions is huge, you know? But I mean, that's basically it. I mean, I don't teach big man jiu-jitsu or small man jiu-jitsu. I just try to teach very clean, authentic jiu-jitsu that I know how to do. So like someone will ask me a question, if I say I don't know it, I don't know it, you know? But I try to be as well-rounded as possible to be able to teach as much jiu-jitsu as possible. And I mean, that's basically it. I mean, I got guys that are like 300 pounds that train in my gym that are my students, you know? And if that doesn't give you kind of hope of understanding like, oh, this guy's 300 pounds and he's learning jiu-jitsu from him, I don't know what's going on. But I've also got like 90-pound girls that train with me, you know? So like for me, like it's a very good sign of being able to teach jiu-jitsu that's not just for one style of person, you know, whether it's man, female, old, young, small or big, you know? But I mean, that's really it. There's nothing fancy, man. I don't teach fancy shit. I mean, you guys have seen, like, you know, I can, but like it's dumb. I don't believe in it, you know? So just keeping it simple, making shit that works, making a difference, you know, especially when I teach at my academy or someone else's. Like my goal is to make one difference, whether it's a grip or it's a thought process for one person so they actually have more success. And if I can do that, I feel like I'm successful.
I wanted to ask you about it. Like, do you know kind of, because Keenan's kind of a big personality for sure. Do you know kind of the situation with him? Because he's kind of been a training partner of yours for some time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even have to like kind of like just tweak this in any shape, way, or form. Like, I mean, especially because I'm not there physically in San Diego.
Yeah.
I don't really get as much information as possible. But the HQ A-team competitors have like a group chat. And in this group chat, you know, Keenan made us all aware that basically he's no longer going to be on the team, and Andre made a decision and whatnot. But I mean, I will say that like I enjoy Keenan a lot. I believe that he's got amazing jiu-jitsu. He's got great character as well. But like, the things that he publicly said in the sense of like, what Andre and him had not been on the same page about in terms of like his work ethic and whatnot, like he's very, very talented, but he has his moments of where I can see people will be labeling his work ethic as lazy, and this is a very tough thing to deal with, like at an environment like HQ, especially when you're a guy that's looked at as a leader, so like, you've got a bunch of really, really high-end black belts at HQ, but inside of that, like, you've got Andre, Keenan at this point in time, JT, Hinger, Lucas, and like these guys are like the standout, like they're the chiefs, so like they definitely need to be held at a higher account with Andre because they're going to be leading as an example to the other lower belts, so I basically just feel like in terms of what I read that Andre felt like he wasn't a good example for the other people at HQ. And I know from personal experience that if you do not meet the standard that Andre has given to you, he has a conversation with you. He gives you like a constructive criticism. He lets you know his opinion and how you can change that. I've been put on probation quite a few times, but he gives you the chance to basically say like, hey, you can definitely improve here, and if you don't improve, I can see that there's potential problems that could happen for you. And I don't want this stuff for you, whether it's losing sponsors or not having good training partners anymore or a place to train, and I definitely feel like Andre had this conversation with Keenan, and Keenan just kind of embraced who he was and just like, what, let's just agree to disagree. It's not going to work. And Andre made a decision to make him leave, and then that was it. But I haven't seen Andre make any kind of public statement.
Sure.
So Andre hasn't really made a statement to any of the HQ guys anyway, in the chat anyway. And I've talked to him about the topic, and he kind of just pushed it off. So it's his team. He's the boss, so like it's tough because like there's a lot of black belts, but he's also a black belt. But you got to understand he's the boss of all the bosses.
Right.
So
Sure.
It's a tough situation, but it will definitely be interesting from my perspective and point of view of what kind of internal stir up this is going to create at HQ in terms of where Keenan decides to go, if he makes his own team, if he's whatever it may be, because he has a very, very big following, but he also has a very big following inside ATOS. So you may see something like a shift of some sort, and HQ is definitely, in terms of being a powerhouse team, is coming in terms of like a change soon. Like you got guys from Unity now and some other teams that are like, you're seeing the shift of like teams that are coming up in terms of quality. Mm-hmm. And this may be the bridge from ATOS being the number one team to kind of like going into 3, 4, or 5, because some guys may switch over to somewhere else. So that's just my opinion. I don't know if it'll happen, but
sure.
Keenan definitely has a lot of sway in the community,
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what pans out. But I saw him in New York and he was like, hey man, what's up? So he's got no hard feelings, but there's a lot that goes with that for sure.
That'll be fun to watch. It's just good. It's not bad for jiu-jitsu, you have so many high-level guys at one spot. It's just kind of, I almost feel like maybe it's a natural progression, I just think it is. I think it's just the way like you build these guys up and you want it. I don't know if you want that to happen. I guess you want to keep everywhere, but the whole point of building these guys up is that everybody kind of, branches out and kind of.
Well, it typically happens with most teams at some point where you get these like big, especially these teams like where they'll have all these guys come in and then they're all like monsters. Like what was it? Was it Masters or Brasa or something back in the day? Like
Brasa,
everybody split off afterwards. Because all those guys are there, and then it's with guys that are high level competitors, especially and doing things. It's a lot. It's hard to contain that. Hard to contain that many people inside one place under one banner where they're like, well, I'm really good, so I want to go spread my wings a little bit and kind of grow, which it only makes sense. I get it,
Yeah. You definitely, and you have Andre who has verbally expressed that the last time he's ever going to compete is against Felipe at ADCC's, his last super fight, right?
Oh, wow.
So you're definitely going to need, from my point of view, from Andre's point of view, whatever you want to do, whatever it may be, like, Andre has been an amazing example and an exception of being a leader on the field. Like he's competed while having a winning team.
Yeah.
This is something that's very, very hard to do. Very few people have done it. But Andre is like, he's an amazing leader, So like, I would imagine that because of the way that he's been leading, that once he steps down from competition, there's going to be this like hierarchy, like inside thing where you have all these lions running around where it's like, well, who's leading us from the field now, you know? And
Like a power
I'm
vacuum.
sure that this is also impacted having Keenan lead the team, because once he steps down, you know, there's only going to be a select few people who can lead on the field, you know? And like, if you don't have a guy that is following your example, that could be very dangerous, you know? So especially with something that you created, you know, I mean, ATOS is a multi-million-dollar business, you know? So like the fact that like, it's like, hey, I'm going to step down from this competition, but I need someone to step up. Hey, I can't have you because you're not doing a good job. That could be potentially bad for the team, for the business, you know?
Sure.
So like, I can understand it from multiple aspects, but there's definitely a lot of guys in there that could step up, you know, but like Keenan's a great dude, you know, like the fact that he's an innovator and he's an American and he's liked by a lot of people and he's got great competition skills, but like, you know, there's plenty of other guys in there, you know, but I can see it from a perspective. If I was in Andre's shoes, why it would make sense.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and it's even just from a situation where like it's not like a knock against anyone. Sometimes it comes down to if you've created this thing and you have this vision for what you think this thing is supposed to look like, you know, someone could be amazing, right? They could be amazing at whatever skill set this is, right? But then you're saying, well, I don't think you're the right person for this particular position that you would then have to be in. And again, it's not necessarily a knock. It's just like, I have this vision for it and it's different than what I think you would bring to the table. So, you know, especially like you said, if he's created this thing and he's getting ready to step down, he has to maintain that. I wonder how that's going to work with him. Cause like you said, he's been kind of the general, like, you know, on the battlefield. You know, I wonder how that's going to work because there's been like several coaches that have been able to, you know, manage it like from the back end. You know, like where like you had guys like, you know, Jock Ray and stuff in Alliance where they were always around running these teams. And they were consistently for a while producing good guys. I wonder how that's going to work when, you know, he steps back as the general from behind the battle lines, right? And you're leading people in, but you're not necessarily in the thick of it with them.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely gonna be interesting. I mean, like, if you kind of like watch competitive jiu-jitsu and you watch the teams that win, I mean, like Alliance is huge, Gracie Barra is huge, ATOS is very small. Like the guys that are winning the team title, 90% of those competitors are from one academy, not like a Gracie Barra or Alliance where it's like you got Marcelo's, you got Cabrinhas, you've got Lucas, you've got Bruno. Like it's not the same. So definitely ATOS is more unique. But I mean, if you watch like every 5, 6, 7 years, there's this shift. Of who's the number one team, you know, and it's like, ironically enough, we're getting to that time frame, you know, with ATOS being at the top, and like you've got the general stepping down to a degree. So like, is that ironic? Is it not ironic? Will it make a difference? I mean, I honestly don't know, but like when you're watching black belt adult worlds and you're seeing the guys now that compete, there's like not every single guy winning that division is an ATOS guy anymore, you know, like things are changing, you know, and I can definitely see, like I said, what you're saying too. Like, you know, it's going to be interesting to see what actually happens, but I have no idea what will happen. I mean, like the Unity guys, the Cicero Costa guys, like they're absolute animals, you know, like all. But like again, like at some point in time, that shift will happen, and I don't know what's going to come from it.
Yeah, because you're right. Because it was like, you know, back before ATOS like sort of took hold in a lot of those tournaments. It was, you know, Gracie Barra and Alliance were typically like going back and forth, and Alliance would win the team like Grand Slam. You know, they'd win the Pans Worlds and you know, European titles, and then the little gym in like, what was it 2011, 2012? This little gym in San Diego, ATOS, all of a sudden started putting dudes on the podium, and then they would consistently do this year after year. And then it just kind of grew. And like you said, everything's in that one gym. But then when you guys go to big tournaments, you win you win a lot of titles. So it is interesting because it doesn't have that same sort of ability to where. But then again, I mean, maybe we say that, but then like guys like you are out there creating gyms, and you have guys like JT he's made his gym, right? You got all these other guys that are spread out. So maybe, you know, this is a shift, but maybe, you know, in due time it becomes like a Gracie Barra or a you know, Alliance where they have all these killers out there teaching other people to become killers, and then you kind of pull from a much larger, you know, group of people.
Yeah, I mean, I get the affiliation is definitely growing, you know. JT was the first ATOS HQ competitor to leave home and start like his own thing, you know. I mean, I don't think I nearly had the same amount of success that JT does, so I don't have that same kind of poise, but like I was the second to leave to then do it, you know, but like everybody else is like, they're all there. They're all there, you know? So like, I mean, I can see the affiliation growing outside of that, but like in terms of competitors, if you like literally went right now to IBJJF website and you looked at the amount of competitors, like 90% of those dudes are all from HQ. You know, like you've got some guys here and there that are really good from other spots, like Kyle Almeida's academy in like somewhere in Brazil, but like he's got Bianca Basilio and like her brother and all this other stuff. So like there are good guys that are coming from other academies, but like if you took away all the affiliates, still 90% of those guys. Like, man, some of the divisions have like 7 or 8 ATOS guys in it, and not all of them are on the A team. That's terrifying. I think middleweight has 6 ATOS competitors. You know, and like you think like none of those guys are just Joe Schmoes. They're all world-class black belts. And at some point in time, there can only be 2 A-team guys because it's the A-team that wins the team title. So like there's even more people than you're seeing out there, you know. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen, man. It's definitely going to be interesting. But from a competitor standpoint, I hope it always lasts. From a business standpoint and also an academy owner of the affiliation, yeah, it's great too. But like, I don't know what the fuck is going to happen, man. It's crazy.
How many? I'm just curious. How many black belts are at ATOS HQ?
Like year round?
Just in general, that like consistent like guys that train there that are black belts. I just want to.
Are you talking about like on a night of training, or
well,
you
just
about,
in
like,
general, like that are go to the gym? Like how many black belts there? I
Like
mean, we've got like what, like 5 or something.
No. If you were to like walk in there and like watch a 6 p.m. class at HQ, you would see probably like 18 to 20 black belts.
It's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, there's classes like now, like if you watch, like Andre will post photos all the time of it, but like their regular night class, not the competitive class, the regular night class has like 95 people on the mat.
What?
Yeah, I saw this like fundamentals class the other day. He was just like, "This is bananas."
Yeah, it's crazy. And I mean, like, but you'll see like Hinger, Lucas, you'll see all these world-class black belts that are in there, but like the black belt, the line goes all the way around the entire mat, and the mat's the size of an IBJJF Open. It's fucking 6 mats.
Wow.
But like the black belts take up like 1.5 sides, and then the brown belts start, and the purples and the blue. It's crazy, but like, I mean, like there'll be nights where there's like 35 black belts. You know, like it's just astronomical, man. It's crazy.
Well, Kristian, what do you have going on like as far as later this year? You have any seminars, anything you want to kind of let us know about?
I mean, it would be too hard to let you know about seminars. I mean, I'm constantly traveling. I'm about to do like a 9-day, 10-day tour where I'm in Michigan and in Chicago, and then I come back and I go to Idaho and I'm teaching like a camp and I teach 3 seminars there. But I mean, I'm always traveling doing that stuff. But I just released a 50/50 DVD. That's about it. It just went live like last week. I got another one coming out probably in like maybe 4 months. But I mean, other than that, just getting ready to open up the new academy. So I'm just basically trying to invest as much money and time into that as possible here in Philadelphia. So it'll be like the mecca of the East Coast Jiu-Jitsu. No one's ever seen this kind of facility before. So I'm putting a lot of work into making sure that it's checking as many boxes with creating quality for brand new consumers to come in and understand what Jiu-Jitsu is. So I mean, that's basically it, man. Just Jiu-Jitsu all the time, just staying busy, lots of traveling, trying to make money to put into the academy, but that's about it.
So if someone wants to find out either about your gym or about the instructionals that you've released, where can they find those on the interwebs?
I mean, the best bet is to like go to my Instagram. That's where I kind of like make everything line up. It's just at Kristian Woodmansee.
Okay.
But there I talk about my instructionals. You'll see stuff from my class. I'll put videos. I talk about my personal life, and I give like, you know, my insight on hard trainings, good trainings, all that stuff like that. But cool. I mean, other than that, like, yeah, I mean, it's super easy. You just message me on Facebook or some shit like that. But I'm easily approachable. But that's about it.
Nice. And if you guys have a chance to make it to one of his seminars or, you know, pick up one of his instructionals, I would encourage you to do it. He did a seminar out at the gym last year. He was coming through Kentucky, and he stopped there and did a seminar, and the teaching was really good. Some techniques, like I said, small things that I, like you were teaching and you were talking about, I would like to at least give someone one little thing at least to take away from the class. And I definitely took a couple of grips away. The little taco grip, that's been pretty useful. And there was another little grip that he showed from side control that's been helping me get to the back. So I would encourage you guys to invest in his products if you guys decide to pick one up.
Yeah, it's been
You're
good.
a sweetheart, Chewy. I appreciate that.
I'm just plugging, man. It's good stuff. If there's something I like I won't endorse anything that I don't like. But if it's something I like, I try to spread the word because, again, good stuff's worth something. So
it is like you pick up because you have to be. Honestly, I know we're beating a dead horse, but like you have to be super technical and you have to be super correct with your grips and have the most effective grips. Like being a smaller guy, you have to have that because you can't outmuscle people. So the stuff that you show is useful at every level and at every like kind of size, weight. You know,
Don't talk about beating a dead horse, man. You get us taken off.
What do you mean?
PETA.
What's PETA gonna do?
Come after us.
What are we doing?
Gotta be careful.
Gotta be careful.
Oh my God, you
All right,
guys! Hey, Kristian, thank you so much, man. We appreciate it. At Kristian Woodmansee on Instagram, and thank you for the time, brother. We appreciate it.
Appreciate you guys.
Good talking to you,
thank you
brother.
so much.
Best of luck with everything.
Thank you, you guys as well.
Thanks,
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Bye.
Guys, I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Hope you got something from that. If you guys have any questions about the podcast or comments or anything like that, feel free to send them to me or Eugene on Instagram or wherever. Also, if you guys are on iTunes, give us some stars if you like, some 5 stars if you think it's worth it. If you don't think it's worth it, tell me why. Send me a message. I'd like to make the podcast better if I can. So again, thank you guys so much for listening. And again, if you guys would like to support the podcast in any way, you can check out the Patreon at patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast for the extras that we release there, videos and podcast audio clips. And then if you guys want to save some money on the CBD, charlottesweb.com/Jiu-Jitsu10. Or no, this is Charlotte's Web. But use the promo code Jiu-Jitsu10. See, I'm terrible about this.
You almost did it perfectly.
Man, I'm just terrible at this promo stuff. I like this stuff. And again, I'll say this again and again and again, guys. I don't share stuff I don't like, right? Like for instance, if I promote something, I 100% promise you, if you were looking to my cupboard, it's what I'm using. Like if you were to look in my little supplement cupboard that I have in my house, there it is, Charlotte's Web. I like the chocolate mint one because I think it tastes good. But that's what I use every night when I go to sleep, and I feel so much better.
What if we checked in your underwear drawer? What will we find in there?
Find Adidas underwear. I buy those packs of the spandexy ones. They're so comfortable and they dry super quick. Just tons of those. Because as a jiu-jitsu coach, man, you got to have lots of clothes. They don't tell you this. They don't tell you that when you become a full-time jiu-jitsu coach or trainer or whatever, when you start doing jiu-jitsu full-time, you go through so much clothing. It's crazy. It's gis and no-gi stuff and underwear, undershirts.
Is that a weird question that you've ever gotten like that?
What's that?
What underwear do you wear, Chewy?
No, I've never gotten what underwear do you wear. That's just you, you creepy bastard.
No.
How are you gonna ask what kind of underwear?
I don't know.
You know what kind of underwear I use.
I don't know.
We've been back in the locker room before. You know.
Oh my God.
You know.
This is absurd.
And this episode has taken a turn. I wonder if anybody's even listening right
I
now.
hope they are. Because
I bet
I'm
they're
gonna
not.
do this all the time. I'm gonna ask you some random shit at the end.
I bet they're not. They're like, he's gonna try to sell me on the Patreon again. I'm not gonna listen to this shit. Wait a second, it's going on for another 2 minutes. What the hell are they talking about? Maybe there's something there.
I don't know. This is nice. If you're listening to this and you enjoy the extra banter, I don't know.
We sound like we're like on space. If anyone's listening,
hello,
please make contact.
What the hell? We kind of are in outer space, man.
All right, guys. So I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. Again,
They enjoyed it, Chewy. They enjoyed the podcast.
If you guys enjoy the podcast, feel free to share it around with people. Let people know about it, because I still get messages from people that said, "Oh, dude, I didn't realize you had a podcast." I'm like, dude, I post about it all the time. I don't know what else I got to do.
Why don't you make a video about the
Let
podcast?
people. I think we did. Did we? I think we did. Yeah, we talked about it in one of the videos. Yeah. So,
Well, that's it.
take care, guys.
Really done now. Talk to you later.
Appreciate you.